Hi friends, welcome to this video series where we'll cover the basics of Elliott wave patterns. This video series will be covered in 4 parts as it's a very long theory and we want to make sure that our users understand the basics of this theory. So let's try to understand Elliott wave parts, the basics. As you can see on my screen, this theory was developed by Ralph Nelson Elliott in the early 1700s. What Elliott noticed was that market moves in recognizable patterns, and these patterns is what he referred to as waves. He believed that these patterns can be used to gauge the overall market sentiment and psychology. The way Elliott developed this theory was he took data of stock prices for over 75 years in the past and came up with recognizable patterns that he was able to establish, and accordingly it was publicly publicized as the Elliott Wave Theory. Also, it's important to note that Elliott Wave Theory has some predictive value. What do we mean by predictive value? When we talk about prediction, we mean that we are trying to forecast something. And when we are saying that the market is moving in recognizable patterns, that means that when some pattern is formed, we can try and predict what the next pattern is going to look like. That is why chartists or Elliotticians, that's what they call themselves, practice Elliott Wave Theory to identify and predict the probable direction of the future movement of stock prices. Elliott wave pattern typically comprises of 8 waves. The first 5 waves are known as your motive waves, as you can see on my screen, and the next 3 waves are known as your corrective waves. The first 5 waves, the motive waves, let's talk about them. The 5 waves is typically representing your primary trend, which in this case is an uptrend and is typically represented by numbers. The first movement is number 1 or wave number 1. This is wave number 2, wave number 3, wave number 4 and wave number 5. These 5 wave structure together is known as your motive wave, where wave 1, wave 3 and wave 5 are basically your primary movement or aligned with the primary trend. Wave 2 and wave 4 are corrections or retracements of these 3 waves. Coming to the next part, that is your corrective waves. This is a correction of the overall primary trend and is numbered or labeled as alphabets A, B and C. So just to summarize, the Elliott wave pattern is typically an 8 wave pattern where the first 5 waves are known as your motive waves and behave as the primary trend, and the remaining 3 waves are known as your corrective waves. In the case of a downtrend as well, the same principle applies. You have 5 motive waves, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and then correction of the primary downtrend, that is your corrective wave A, B and C. Now let's try to understand the rules which we need to follow for a valid Elliott wave pattern to be constructed. Rule number 1. Wave 2, that is the correction of the primary wave 1, should never retrace 100%. Or in other words, wave 2 cannot touch the origin of wave 1. That is the first rule. The second rule, wave 3 cannot be the shortest. Among these 5 waves, wave 3 cannot be the shortest. It can be wave 1, it can be wave 5. Wave 3 can never be the shortest one, but that does not mean that it cannot be the longest either. It need not be the shortest one, that is what the rule states. And finally, rule number 3, wave 4, which is a correction of wave 3, cannot invade or cannot come in the zone of wave 1. In other words, the low of wave 4 has to be held above the high of wave 1. That is only when this pattern will be called a valid Elliott wave pattern. It is believed that at any given point of time, this particular structure can be visualized in the price action of any chart. That is why a lot of people would want to use Elliott waves to do their charting and practicing. Now, when we talk about Elliott waves and when we say that Elliott wave structure can be plotted and visualized in any chart which has price action, it can be visualized in a monthly chart as well as a weekly chart as well as a daily chart. So, it is very imperative to note that one higher degree wave can also be subdivided into multiple smaller waves. For example, let's focus on the bold line first. This is a typical Elliott wave, as in a motive wave. Wave number 1, wave number 2, wave number 3, wave number 4 and wave number 5. Within each wave, I can try and visualize this kind of a pattern as well on a smaller degree. That is a 5-way motive wave followed by a corrective wave. a motive wave set followed by a corrective wave, a motive wave and then followed by a corrective wave. So what we are trying to imply is that in a higher time frame chart or a larger degree chart, you can still see smaller degree or subwaves in the form of a Elliott wave pattern. So on this note, I would want to pause and end this video, and in the next video, we'll talk about the motive waves further. Thank you.